let's take a look at some of the basics on how do we make patterns and shapes and those types of things, some basic type stuff for using this Easel app. So then we can use the CNC machine. The CNC machine is, again, that's the one that goes out and kind of cuts out shapes for us out of pieces of wood. The largest cut area we can do is 29 inches by 29 inches. That's the largest cut area that we can do. So that's one thing you got to first think about. Of course, get permission for what you're doing. It should make sense of why you're using the CNC machine. It does take a little kind of extra setup. The CNC machine is great for cutting out if you have like really precise shapes you need cut out. You want to do some like engraving or carving, or you have like a lot of a certain type of shape you want to cut out. Like, let's say you want a lot of stars cut out or a lot of circles cut out. That's kind of a pain to do by hand. The CNC machine is great for that. But anyway, one of the first things that we need to do is we need to figure out what's the size of our wood and the thickness of our wood. So in this area up here, we're going to click, and then we can make some adjustments here. Tiling we want off, so make sure that's always, make sure anything with tiling is off. Let's say the piece of wood I'm going to do, again, the largest cut area that we can do is 29 by 29. Let's say I have a chunk of wood and I'm going to get some shapes out of there. Let's say I'm going to do 15 by 15. And let's say I'm doing 3/4 inch thick wood. So then here I type all that information in, and then you can see on the right here that shows our piece of wood, and you can kind of click and drag and move it so you can see. And then notice on the left side here, our grid shows up, and each square right now, we want inches for what we're going to do, and each square right now, so each square is 1 inch. And then notice we can also like zoom in and zoom out to be more precise. And you can use, so that's where you zoom in and out, and then you can drag up and down and left and right. The shapes, text, those types of things, lines that we can do, it's somewhat basic of what's provided in Easel. I'll show you how to do some of that, but if we want something that's more advanced, what we can do is we can use Adobe Illustrator, which it's pretty quick to learn Adobe Illustrator. We can use Adobe Illustrator to draw more complex designs and patterns and those types of things if you have a more complex, let's say like a character. Let's say you want a penguin shape cut out or something like that. Like we would use Adobe Illustrator probably to design that instead of this program. This program is good if you want to do like text. So for example, text, I click. Now notice here, some of this says Pro. Anything that says Pro means that you got to pay for that, and we don't have access to that. So let's say I want to use this font. I click it, and then just like a lot of other programs, now you have a text box, and you can change what it says. So let's say I wanted to say STEM. I'm going to click off of it, and then now I can drag it where I want on my box. I can change the size of it by kind of clicking and dragging those. I can, one of these lets you change the rotation, I think. Yeah, so this I can click and drag if I want to change the rotation. And then one thing that's very important with any kind of shapes stuff you're putting on here is this cut setting, is you have to tell the machine like how deep do you want this cut. So if my wood is 3/4 inch thick, do I want that cut all the way through, or do I want that cut just part of the way through? And I want you to notice, I don't know why this happens, but it's definitely happening with this font right now. Notice how in this view, it looks kind of goofy. I don't know why. Not sure why it's doing that right now, but I've seen that happen in the past. Anyway, so that's font. Now let's say a shape. Let's say I want to do a star. So again, I can click and drag, I can enlarge and shrink, I can angle my shape. And here's what's very important about cut settings. What do you want to do with that star? Do you want to completely like kind of a depression there, like most of it kind of cut out? Or now notice, here's our setting. So I click cut, and again, I can adjust the depth of my cut for that. And then this is the really important settings. Or do I want the machine to actually cut me out a star? So am I clearing out a pocket, or am I cutting on the shape? So I'm cutting out, like let's say I want this star to cut out, well then now I got to drag this to cut through. So then if you notice, then you can kind of see that little gap in there. So that now that's showing that I can completely cut this star through. You can draw like lines, those types of things, of course. And then, of course, adjust the lines. And then, again, just giving you a heads up, depending on what you're doing with line type stuff, again, you're most likely going to want to use Adobe Illustrator to be more precise. But those are just some of the basics here. And then just like with a lot of other programs, I can copy and paste this stuff. Let's say I want this star a couple times. Control C, Control V, Control V. And then one thing that's really important is if I'm cutting these shapes out, so I don't want them exactly touching the corner because that could cause issues with setup. Give yourself at least, like, let's say a ½ inch to an inch is good. And then one thing we generally want to do is try and fit this stuff together as best as we can, but not touching. Let's say I'm cutting these stars out. I kind of fit them together. So that way I'm wasting less wood and I can fit more on my piece of wood. So anyway, that's just the simple kind of basics. How do you get started on this? How do you throw some shapes in there, text, adjust the cut settings, the depth, are you going to cut the shape completely out, or what are you going to do, or kind of grind it out? That's kind of the basics of what I want to show you. Once you're ready and got your stuff set up, I have some more information I'll give you in person on what to do once you're ready to start cutting it. And that's because if we don't do that properly, it can actually break the bit, damage the machine. So there's some information I got to give you there. And then, like I said, if you're doing something more complicated, like a more complicated type shape, I will have another lesson on how you use Adobe Illustrator and import the file into here to make that happen.